Is that high enough?
That's perfect.
Yeah.
Actually, you know what? Yeah, that's fine. That'll work. Yep, that'll work.
I'm going to be turning.
Yep.
Should I put it on this? Should I put it on this side?
It's not on yet.
It's not on?
Nope.
Can you turn the volume up?
No, it's on. It's
Okay,
on.
great.
Because
Test. Yep.
so I put this in my back pocket.
Yep, you can put it in your back pocket. Perfect. Test.
Hey, everybody. Hi. Welcome, everyone. We're so glad to have you here tonight. It is such a pleasure to host the first lecture in conjunction with the Garden Club of Darien. Garden Club of Darien has been a great partner for us after we built this barn in 2020, which has enabled us to do so much more than when we just had our house with all the little chopped up rooms. Now we have this big space, and as a result, we can do all the things listed on the back of your program. So take a look, okay? And so after we built this space, Kathy and the Garden Club, I should say, did all of the plantings around the barn. In addition, they put in rain barrels. So as probably you all know, we're the home of Stephen Mather, who's very interested in conservation. The rain barrels are helping us to make conservation happen. So thank you to Kathy and the Garden Club for your plantings, your care of the plants, and for the rain barrels.
Thank you. Well, it was amazing November, and there are a lot of Garden Club members there, so they get more credit than I do.
Okay.
Okay, well, I just wanted to tell everybody a little bit about the Garden Club and what we do, and a little bit of the history, just really short. So, thank you, first of all, for this collaboration, and we're so excited to be celebrating.
Hold on. There we go. Now you're going to be like,
Woo. Okay, thank you for this collaboration and for including us and asking us. And we're very excited to be here, and we're excited to celebrate Frederick's 200th birthday, correct?
Happy birthday. We'll do that later.
So just a little bit about the GCD and what we do. The GCD, or the Garden Club of Darien, we go by the GCD a lot of times, was established here in 1929, and our organization is a member of the Garden Club of America. And as an organization, we're passionate about education and our environment. Many of our members are amazing horticulturists, talented floral designers, and photographers, and our group is also very active in our community. The gardens outside the door, as Heather mentioned, were designed, planted, and cared for by our provisional group over the past couple of years. Some of our Conservation Committee members have been to Washington, D.C. to attend the National Affairs and Legislation Conference so that our club remains up to date on environmental issues. And community outreach is very important to us. We have a program called Pleasure Through Plants that partners with local senior centers to introduce new skill sets and create floral arrangements with the seniors. We also maintain many of the town gardens, as well as the Memorial Herb Garden at the Museum of Darien, which was established by the GCD almost 50 years ago.
So, to the Garden Club. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so I thought while I have you here, you're my captive audience. I think most of you have been here before. We do have a lot of new people, but many of you took a tour of the house. So I'm just going to say very briefly that actually we have one new person here. Hello, Sandy. Yes. This home, I hope you'll come and take a tour if you haven't. The reason why this house has been preserved and is now a museum is because it has a few claims to fame. One is for being a Revolutionary War house. It was built in 1778 during the Revolutionary War by Deacon Joseph Mather, and we tell you Revolutionary War stories. So if you haven't been here, come back and we'll tell you those stories. Number two, this home was the home of Stephen Ting Mather, the first director of the National Park Service. So Stephen Ting Mather was a conservationist. He was interested in making the parks accessible to the public. He shared so much in common with Frederick Law Olmsted. So the other claim to fame of this property is that it's a beautiful old home. So if you're interested in 1778 structures, come on over and take a look. The final thing I'll say about this house is that we recently got a donation from the family of an additional, another 1.1 acres of property on the north side. The land trust, the family donated 3.8 acres to the land trust on the north side. So additional 5 acres of property has been preserved, making these 4 corners, you know, a preserved, beautiful piece of property in Darien for years and years to come. So we are so appreciative to the McPherson family. Yes, thank you. And I should say, one of our goals is to create a more park-like setting here. Right now you see the beautiful homes on the north side, but we would prefer to have a more park-like setting that Stephen Mather might have liked. So if you happen to get an email asking you for money to donate to our more park-like setting, feel free to respond. Yes. So tonight we are going to learn about Frederick Law Olmsted. Like the Mather family, the Olmsted family traveled via boat from England to Boston in the early 1930s, facing the religious persecution of the king. They were
1630s.
What did I just say?
19.
Oh, yeah, sorry, 1630s. It even says it right there. Okay. And of course, another similarity between the families is that we both have heroes. Ours is Stephen Ting Mather. Yours is Frederick Law Olmsted, but both working towards the same goal at slightly different times in slightly different ways, but their goal was to celebrate, to conserve nature, and make it available to the public. So today, just 1 month before Frederick Law Olmsted's 200th birthday, we will celebrate his life and legacy. So we're very thankful to have his descendant, Jonathan Olmsted, here today. We are also very thankful for DAF Media, the Darien Athletic Foundation media. I am quite appreciative that DAF Media is moving beyond athletics to cover, more, and that's part of what's important to them now. So thank you up there, Damien. Hi. Yep. Okay. Thank you. There's somebody else who I was going to thank, and now I don't even remember. Oh, thank you, Barrett Books, for providing these books that you can purchase. Look at that. Power of Scenery. There will be a discussion online soon. Paige, what's the date? April 14th. The author of this book will be in conversation with Kathleen Millard. Is she here? Oh, hi. Oh, there you are. Yes, and Jonathan Olmsted discussing this book. And we also have this beautiful coffee table book. So feel free to purchase if you would like after the talk. Without further ado, please welcome, actually, there is further ado. We just have a little present for you here. These are our little tokens of our appreciation for you being here. Socks from Pendleton, from Yosemite. Oh, look, what do you have? You have socks. Is that what you're trying to tell me? You have socks? Any more socks? Good on socks.
This is Van Gogh's Starry Night.
There you go. Well, now you have Yosemite socks.
Oh, Yosemite socks.
Yeah,
good.
and so you can trade those in, toss those in the trash, and a mug.
Okay.
So anyway, please welcome Olmsted's descendant, longtime Darien resident, and also Tracy Durpay's favorite bowling partner next to her husband.
Yeah.
Right? You guys played for quite some time. Tracy Durpay could not be here tonight because she's under the weather. So hi, Tracy. And
she's watching it.
she's watching. We see you. So welcome.
Okay, thank you. Is this yours?
Oh, that's mine. Yeah. Oh, and put your phones on, put your phones on silent.
Okay, before I start, I just want to thank Heather Raker of Mather Homestead Foundation for organizing this presentation. I also want to thank Tracy Drippe, Betsy Becker, and Kathy Lozier, who you just heard from, of the Garden Club of Darien for coordinating with Mather to make it a joint presentation. So I've attended some lectures here at the Mather, at this wonderful barn. I think is terrific. And now I get a chance to do it myself, and you'll be hearing about the highlights of the life and works of Frederick Law Olmsted. So thank you all for being here. Frederick Law Olmsted is considered the father of American landscape architecture. And April 26, 2022 will mark the 200th anniversary of his birth, and many groups around the country are celebrating his legacy. Tonight we'll look at his early years, followed by several of his most notable landscape projects. I hope I can still see this.
Very important thing here. We got stage lighting here, and I didn't turn it on.
This will help.
Ooh la la, ooh la la.
Now I can tell you what I'm going to tell you. Okay. Olmsted is most famous for designing Central Park in 1857. And that was his first landscape project. And he's the most famous, but it's the first time he ever did this kind of work. On the left, he's in his mid-30s during the time when he was working on Central Park. And on the right is a portrait by John Singer Sargent. And he's in his mid-70s at the Biltmore Estate in Asheville, North Carolina, which was Olmsted's last project. So you got his first is Central Park, his last is Biltmore. This aerial view of Central Park is looking south. It comprises 850 acres and is 2.5 miles long and about a half mile wide. Central Park was a joint venture with Calvert Vaux, a young English architect. Whoops, I moved too many pages, but I'll get there. They worked together on several early landscape projects, and then they went their separate ways, and Vaux was more of a architect of structures, buildings and the like, bridges, and later we'll take a close look at the range of design elements in Central Park. But first, I want to go to the Biltmore, which is his last project. The Biltmore was a Vanderbilt project started in 1895, comprising 125,000 acres of hills, valleys, ponds, meadows, gardens, forests, and miles of hiking trails, all with vast views of the Blue Ridge Mountains. This major landscape design capped Olmsted's career and was his last project. But first, let's step back to the earlier years. Before becoming a landscape architect, Olmsted tried his hand at various occupations. Merchant, his father was a merchant and he worked in that field. Apprentice seaman, he went on a ship to Asia. Experimental farmer, we'll talk a little bit about it. A journalist, and even a gold mine manager. He also made his mark as a voice and practitioner of conservation. Early on, supported by his father, he chose to learn about farming, first at Sachem's Head on the Connecticut coast, and then near the south shore of Staten Island. In 1850, he took a 6-month walking tour in England that was to prove life-changing. He visited Liverpool's Birkenhead Park and admired the natural rural scenery and of the landscape, but especially the fact that it was open to the public for all ages and all classes, which is rare in England. This inspired his vision that the park access should be a right of all Americans. He expressed his experiences in a book called Walks and Talks of an American Farmer in England. That's on the left. In 1853, he traveled our southern states as a journalist for the New York Times under a pseudonym Yeoman to write dispatches examining the system of slavery. That's why he needed a pseudonym. He published his findings in the book called The Cotton Kingdom, which is on the right. Based on his firsthand experiences in studying slavery on the plantations of the South, he became an abolitionist. During the Civil War, he set up and ran the U.S. Sanitary Commission, the precursor to the American Red Cross. This Confederate vessel was captured by the U.S. Navy and refitted as a hospital ship to care for wounded Union soldiers. In 1863, Olmsted was hired to manage the Mariposa estate in California, which included a struggling gold mine. He moved his family to the mining town, and from there, they were able to take family trips into the Sierra wilderness. This is when he discovered the beauty of Yosemite Valley and wrote his historic report, Yosemite and the Mariposa Grove. He prescribed preserving extraordinary natural scenery, such as this, to be kept unspoiled as public parks for people. President Lincoln signed the Yosemite Grant Act in 1864 to establish Yosemite as a California state park. This was the first time the federal government had set aside land for a public park to be protected in perpetuity. Olmsted was asked to head the commission overseeing the conservation of Yosemite Park. Now, while Yellowstone was the first national park in 1872, Yosemite moved from state park to national park in 1906. This book that the bookstore has here called The Power of Scenery is about the evolution of the national park system, and Yosemite is really almost like a national park, even though it was given to the state of California. But it's technically not the first national park, but it's the start of the movement. Later, the 14 existing national parks came together in the National Park Service. Is this working? Okay. Established by Congress in 1916 and headed by Stephen Mather. There's a fun story of how Mather came to run the national parks. Some of you may know it. In 1914, Mather observed the deteriorating conditions in several western national parks, and he wrote a letter of protest to Washington. Soon he received a reply from the Secretary of the Interior, Franklin Lane, former classmate of Mather's from the University of California. And Lane responded, quote, "Dear Steve, if you don't like the way the parks are being run, come on down to Washington and run them yourself." So he did. Mather was an extraordinary salesman, and he gained the support of the press, federal and state officials, other dignitaries, business leaders, as well as artists and photographers. He was constantly taking these public influencers on trips to see the parks for themselves. He was a consummate promoter of the national parks, and he liked doing it in person, on site, sometimes on pack trips. Here is what Mather told his assistant, Horace Albright, quote, "I'm not an organization man. I like doing things in the field, not fiddle-faddle around an office, pushing papers and digging around in details. Without you, I would have nobody to take care of these things, and I simply cannot tackle them myself." So he was always out and always promoting. By the end of Mather's tenure, there were 40 national parks and a professional system for preserving and protecting them. So it went from 14 in 1916 to 40 in 1929. Now we're back to Olmsted. Another important conservation project that Olmsted worked hard on was Niagara Falls State Park. The park comprised 435 acres and contains the American Falls, the Bridal Veil Falls, and a portion of the Horseshoe Falls. Sightseers had limited access to view the falls due to industrialization and commercial development all along the viewing areas connected to the generation of power from the falls. A strong conservation movement led the state of New York to purchase, restore, and preserve land surrounding Niagara Falls, to create parklands and walkways for the public to enjoy the original national beauty of this historic site. So the two big conservation projects that he is connected to are Yosemite and Niagara Falls, because mostly he was doing parks that were not created by nature, but he was creating the parks in cities. But first he left Yosemite and the Mariposa Grove behind and returned east in 1865 to focus on his landscape career. And then he was age 43. He had done the design for Central Park earlier, but he'd done all these other careers, and he came back to be a landscape architect full-time. After the success of Central Park, every city wanted a park. So for the rest of his life, Olmsted was busy designing hundreds of landscapes for other cities, capitals, schools and colleges, and private estates. Let's look at 10 of the more notable works other than Central Park, which we will look at last. The Olmsted Buffalo Park system connected 6 parks, 7 parkways, and 8 circles. The idea was to have fingers extending into the city from several parks, the largest of which was Delaware Park. The concept was inspired in part by the boulevards of Paris. Olmsted described Buffalo as, quote, "the best planned city in the United States." Well, he had something to complimenting himself. And this plan inspired Chicago, San Francisco, and Boston. Every city wanted one. The Boston Park system consists of 1,100 acres in a chain linking parkways and waterways circling around Boston, giving the appearance of an emerald necklace. The work on Boston's Back Bay Fens was the first effort at wetlands restoration. The Fens is near Fenway Park and the Fine Arts Museum. These green parkways are not far from the Arnold Arboretum, which Olmsted designed and is now managed by Harvard University. Also close by is his home and office called Fairstead in Brookline, which is now a National Historic Site. And all the plans are there. He and his partners worked from that building. The U.S. Capitol, the grounds, they pay service to the architecture and symmetry of the city with oval-shaped tree-lined paths to establish a softer and more graceful naturalism. Olmsted also designed the plazas, fountain, and terrace walls that wrap around the Capitol to provide a strong architectural base to the building and heighten its grandeur. And as you know, the terrace is where the presidential inauguration takes place. From this hilltop site, the Capitol grounds face the National Mall with views of the Washington Monument, the reflecting pool, and the Lincoln Memorial. Mont Royal Park contains 692 acres and sits on top of a large intrusive rock hill or small mountain. The park contains some 60 species of trees and more than 250 plant varieties, as well as the home to almost 200 kinds of birds. Today in winter, there's a toboggan run and cross-country ski and snow trails. Belle Isle Park is a 982-acre recreational island park in the Detroit River with man-made lagoons, walking bridges, meadows, pathways, and fountains. It is home to an aquarium, a conservatory, a nature center, a museum, and a Coast Guard station. Belle Isle Park is connected to the city of Detroit by the MacArthur Bridge, named for General Douglas MacArthur. For the Lawrenceville School Master Plan, Olmsted drew from the English campus system with buildings around a central green called the Circle. Notice all the curves, no straight lines. The campus contains 370 species of trees planted outside the circle. The concept was for the center of the campus to convey the essence of a community. Lawrenceville Circle today is still the prominent feature of the Lawrenceville campus, now with mature trees. Olmsted's plan for Stanford University at the base of the Palo Alto foothills establishes Palm Drive as the central access road. At the far end, it divides into an oval in front of the main sandstone quadrangle of colonnaded lined arcades, under red tile roofs. The trees and plants are all varieties that thrive in the California semi-arid climate, including palm, live oak, eucalyptus, even cactus. Stanford lands cover over 8,000 acres, including a horse farm, a lake, and a golf course. Think Tiger Woods. Some of the land is leased to companies, a shopping center, a hospital, a hotel, and a linear accelerator. Olmsted's master plan for the core of the Stanford campus was to have an inner and outer quadrangle, or quad. This captures the essence of a community like the Circle at Lawrenceville. Now, this is rectilinear. The shape is governed by the sandstone buildings, joined by the covered arcades with a continuous series of arches in the Romanesque and Mission Revival style. So you can see there's an and a quad around the outside. And all the courses, each corner was the English corner, the history corner, the science. For the Chicago World's Fair, Olmsted converted the marshy shoreline along Lake Michigan into lagoons with native plantings of willows, cattails, rushes, irises, and pond lilies along the waterways. The fair was formerly called the World's Columbian Exposition, celebrating the 400th anniversary of the discovery of America by Christopher Columbus. It was also known as the White City. All of the buildings were white classical designs, each by a different architect. Daniel Burnham, the driving force behind the fair, said of Olmsted, quote, "He is an artist. He plants with lakes and wooded slopes, with grassy meadows and forest-covered hills, with mountainsides and water views." The Biltmore landscape plan includes a 3-mile winding access drive planted with rhododendrons, azaleas, mountain laurels, and dogwood. There are formal gardens near the mansion and thousands of acres of natural forests where the principles of American forestry were developed, practiced, and recognized. The mansion is the largest private home in America, still to this day, and is open to the public along with the grounds. Central Park in New York is shown here looking from north to south from 110th to 59th Street. It can be accessed from many entrances along all 4 borders. Janet and I lived very near the park in the 1970s, and we made use of the park all the time. We took walks, had picnics, attended concerts. But the story of Central Park starts about 170 years ago. In 1853, New York State officials set aside land in New York City from 59th to 110th Street between 5th and 8th Avenue for a public park. Government officials needed help turning this rugged landscape into an urban park, so they held a design competition. Out of 33 entries, they selected a plan submitted by Frederick Law Olmsted and Calvert Vaux. The land acquired for the new park was rocky and swampy, with squatter settlements which had to be removed. Construction began on the park in the late 1850s. 20,000 workers moved nearly 5 million cubic yards of stone, earth, and topsoil. They drained the swamps with below-grade engineering and diverted water to lakes, ponds, and waterways. Calvert Vaux designed 36 bridges and arches and 11 overpasses over transverse roads. They planted over 300,000 trees, shrubs, and vines and created large, open, grassy meadows. Notice all the rock outcrops, much of which had to be blasted or incorporated in the design. Olmsted's vision for Central Park was inspired by Birkenhead Park in England, shown on the left. Parks in England were natural and pastoral, like the rural countryside, not formal like Versailles in France. The concept was more about open space, grassy meadows, trees for shade, water bodies, and places to roam, not flower gardens. The design was organic, as if not man-made. The map on the right shows only the southern end of Central Park from 59th to 78th Street. You can see the similarity with the Birkenhead design. There are lots of curves, lots of open space and water. Central Park would have informal woodlands with winding paths and curving roads. The plan was not formal or symmetrical. There are many vistas over large grass fields and across bodies of open water. The roadways were for horse-drawn carriages. Here is the winning design by Olmsted and Vaux called the Greensward Plan, chosen in 1857. I had to break it into 2 pieces because it's so long. On the top is the southern half, and on the bottom, the northern half. When the plan is on display, it is about 10 feet long and 2 feet wide. Now, I know it's hard to read any detail here, but you can get a sense of the curving paths and the meadows, the roadways, the lakes and ponds, and a lot of trees which are actually shown here on the original plan. The landscapes were all man-made and all built by hand. One of the plan's standout features was the sunken transverse roads hidden below grade out of sight of the park where walkers and runners and bikers would roam. Much rock had to be blasted for the 4 sunken transverse roadways that separate east-west traffic from the park landscape. While the current roads are paved for cars, they were originally gravel for horse-drawn carriages. Also, the horseback riding trails are on cinder paths that go under bridges and through tunnels so as not to intersect with pedestrians on walking paths at grade level. You saw the squatter settlements with all the existing exposed bedrock, much of which had to be blasted. But some of these outcrops became part of the natural design as shown here. Although it's true that the park was all man-made, the exposed rocks are ancient bedrock over 200 million years old, found throughout Manhattan. And many of the outcrops you see in Central Park were shaped by ice. It's fun for kids or even adults to climb among the rocks. Here you see mature trees and meadows that, although man-made, seem completely as you might find in rural nature. Much of Central Park looks like this. Great places to relax, to walk through, to sit and read, or to picnic. We can imagine that when these trees were planted over 160 years ago, they must have been very small. Olmsted said, quote, "Landscape architecture is a field where a long time, sometimes generations, is required for full realization of the designer's goals." Olmsted and Vaux designed Central Park to incorporate a variety of landscapes and experiences. The goal was to create a rural setting, a place to refresh from the city. The 850 acres would encompass open lawns, picturesque woodlands, shaded streams, and broad lakes. It was to be experienced by moving through the park along winding paths, a carriage drive, and a bridle path. No paths are straight or level. They all curve and wander. They rise and they fall. Some are wide open. Others are more intimate, like the one through the narrow archway on the right. Most of the plantings are green, but there are seasons with perennial blooms. The Ramble is a 36-acre woodland retreat in the middle of the park with twisting paths, meandering streams, thick canopy, giant boulders, lush scenery, and over 200 species of birds. After 150 years since the park's completion, the snowy owl has made an appearance in Central Park. The woodland escape creates a wilderness experience and an atmosphere reminiscent of the Adirondacks, an original intent of the park design. There are many intimate places where water, a bridge, and plantings create a lush setting. Here there are some wildflowers, but not formal flower beds. The bridges, arches, stairways, fountains, arbors, and other structures within the park were designed by Calvert Vaux, the architect partner of Olmsted. There are only a few buildings in the park, and it's been a constant struggle over many years to keep developers from gaining access to park land. The mall is one of the only straight lines in the park. This is a long and wide promenade with trees, lamps, benches lined on both sides. It actually travels on a diagonal to the park border, so while it's straight, it goes its own way and is not parallel to the border or symmetrical to any of the design. And it provides a grand walkway into the heart of the park from the south entrance where most people start. Bethesda Fountain can be reached by walking down a grand staircase from the mall to the plaza surrounding the fountain. There are other fountains and plazas throughout the park, but this is the largest and most popular. And just beyond the fountain is the lake for boating. Boats are available to rent at the boathouse. There are canoes and rowboats, but no power boats. The boathouse is also a good restaurant for lunch or dinner overlooking the lake. Boats were always available at this site, but amenities like this restaurant have been enhanced over the years without compromising the rest of the park or the qualities of the rural experience. Once you get your boat, you paddle under this bow bridge to get to a larger open lake. This is a great way to spend a few hours. Out here, it seems like you totally have escaped New York City. There are islands to explore by boat or by walking across this bow bridge. The reservoir covers 100 acres and extends 10 blocks from 86th to 96th Street. It has an average depth of 10 feet and holds about 1 billion gallons of water. There is a 1.5 mile cinder path around the entire circumference of the reservoir with spectacular views of the city. And this is a popular feature for walkers and runners. Belvedere Castle is one of the few significant buildings within the park. Situated atop Vista Rock, it offers sweeping views of the park, the Great Lawn to the north, and the Ramble to the south, as well as the surrounding cityscape. Fittingly, Belvedere means beautiful view in Italian. It was originally built without windows or doors as an open-air viewing platform best from the upper terraces. The National Weather Service collects temperature, wind, and rainfall data from the castle. Many recreational activities take place in Central Park. Here north of the reservoir are several baseball fields. There are also soccer fields, tennis courts, and riding stables. Boating, skating, biking, and running are among the most popular activities. You can also ride the roadways with a driver on a horse-drawn carriage. This pond is a unique place where children, parents, and friends can try out their latest model boats. Often there are races. Once afloat, you hope for a favorable wind. You also hope your boat makes it back to the side of the pond so you can retrieve it. The Central Park Conservancy was established in the 1980s to bring the park back from neglect and disrepair in the 1970s. The Conservancy took over responsibility for park maintenance from the city. It is privately funded, raising millions of dollars each year to care for the park. This more formal garden was restored by the Conservancy and is used for elegant functions such as luncheons or weddings. Many areas of the park have been restored or even enhanced while staying true to the original pastoral design. Today, the park is in first-class shape. The lawns are green, the trees and plants are pruned, there is almost no debris, and crime has been significantly reduced. The Metropolitan Museum of Art sits on Fifth Avenue at 82nd Street and extends a little way into Central Park. Olmsted was one of the museum founders, so he clearly welcomed this landmark at the east side of the park border. There is good synergy between the park and the museum, and they coexist with no difficulty. And there are great views of the park from the fourth floor dining room and from the rooftop terrace. Most museum patrons also enjoy the park on the same visit. This skating rink in the south end of the park provides a popular activity with family and friends in any season. The south end of the park opened in 1858 and was an instant success. It took 15 years to complete the rest of the park, and work progressed right through the Civil War. The pond is close to one of the southern entrances of the park. It's a good first stop, even on a short lunch break. Here you have rocks, grass, trees, plants, water, right inside the southern border. In the background is the Midtown cityscape with the Plaza Hotel and several skyscrapers. The pond hasn't changed, but the view of the city certainly has. Many special events take place in Central Park. Here you see the installation by Cristo of his saffron gates along the pathways throughout the park in 2005. Many people from all over the world, speaking many languages, visited during this exhibition. There are Shakespeare plays and many concerts of all kinds of music: classical, jazz, rock, folk, rock and roll. Weddings are common in the park, and the New York Marathon ends in Central Park. Central Park was designed for the people. It's a rural refuge from the busy city. It has something for everyone and serves people of all ages and all backgrounds. It is the most visited urban park in the United States, with an estimated 40 million visitors annually. It is also the most filmed location in the world. To this day, Central Park is still New York City's jewel. It has been said that, quote, Olmsted crafted a series of inspired landscape designs that literally changed the face of America. And so the landscape legacy of Frederick Law Olmsted endures in this, the 200th anniversary of his birth. Thank you.
Do we have questions? Yes.
Thank you, Heather. Thank you, John, very much. My question is about the New York Botanical Garden. Did the New York Botanical landscape come directly from Olmsted's ideas? Because they seem related.
I don't think so. The New York Botanical Garden?
Yes.
Yeah, no, I know it. I've been, but I don't know who designed it. I know that there's a rose garden in there that was a Rockefeller, Happy Rockefeller or somebody did that.
Prospect Park, you mean? Is it Prospect? No? Brooklyn? Oh. Thank you. Okay. Andrea, were you? Yes? That's what to say.
So aside from his plans and visions, so what are your insights into his personal qualities and skills that enabled him to actually execute these very ambitious and totally controversial projects. I mean, he was able to get them done. What was it about him?
Well, I think he was a good organizer, and that's why he was picked to run that U.S. Sanitary Commission, because that took a tremendous organization, and he had to put it together in pretty short order and get those boats turned into hospital ships. And when he was picked to run the Mariposa estate, even though it was not a successful gold mine, it was because he was a good administrator. And the reason he was picked for Central Park and actually Calvert Vaux asked him to submit a joint proposal, you know, when there was a competition and 33 plans were submitted. He picked him because he was already running, preparing Central Park for a park. Not that he was going to design it, but that he was running all the workers. So he knew every inch of the park, and Vaux knew that. There was a guy named Downing, who was a great gardener and landscape architect, who Vaux and Downing had worked together. And a lot of people think Downing would have been the natural pick because of his landscape experience, because Olmsted didn't have landscape experience. But Downing was killed in a boat fire on the Hudson River before that could have happened. So Vaux had been working with Downing, and Downing was gone, so Vaux asked Olmsted, because he knew the grounds of the park so well from running the construction there, to put the plan together. And I think even though Vaux was an architect and did all the bridges and tunnels and arbors and anything that was structural, Olmsted, having traveled so much, even in his early years with his father in Connecticut, rural Connecticut, and he went to England, and he knew what he liked, or what he was, and he liked what he saw at Birkenhead Park, and he wanted to do something similar here. So he had the taste, I think, in design. So I think he was involved with the layout and the trees and the plants and the pathways and everything, and Vaux did the structures and the bridges and the overpasses. And
was he a good persuader?
He did a lot of writing. He certainly was a good persuader on Yosemite, because he got the bill to Congress and Lincoln signed the act. He worked hard on Niagara Falls, turning that around, because it had been a disaster. That's what everybody who was interested in conservation said, well, don't do what they did at Niagara Falls. So I think he was a good planner. He planned arboretums, he planned the New York World's Fair, and I think that was one of his skills, was running things. Probably had a big ego, too.
Did that get passed down?
I'm an offshoot.
Questions? Yep.
Could you tell us where your family originated in England?
Essex, in a little town called Castle Camps. And they were Puritans. Actually, my family came in 1632 to Boston, and Mather's family came in 1635 to Boston. And I think there weren't that many people around. Like, there were only 120 on James Olmsted's boat, and a lot of them were children. So they must have known each other. And they were both leaving the persecution of the king. In fact, the minister for Olmsted's family had been kicked out of England and was in Holland. So that when they came over, his name was Thomas Hooker, and they invited him to be their pastor. And after Boston, they moved down to and founded Hartford. And so James Olmsted is on the obelisk in Hartford. And he was born in Hartford. Frederick Law Olmsted was born in Hartford, so there's a Connecticut connection. But what happened when they left in 1632, it was a farm. It was an old, with a thatched roof and a little moat. They gave it to Cambridge University, and Cambridge leased it to farmers and kept the ownership of it over the years. And Janet and I were transferred to London for a while. We went out to see it, and it was called Olmsted Hall, and we could sign the book. And it was still part owned by Cambridge. So very rural.
Do you know who designed Birkenhead Park?
Birkenhead Park? Well, when he came over in 1850 for a 6-month tour, that park struck him the most, I think, because it was open to all classes and all ages, whereas most of the landscape that was recreational in England was on family estates. I mean, that's where they did their hunting and shooting and fishing and had weekend guests, and that wasn't available to the public. So he came up with this philosophy that public parks should be open to all Americans.
But you don't know who designed Birkenhead Park?
I did.
Fair enough.
What I do know is he admired the work of Capability Brown and Humphrey Repton, but they didn't design Birkenhead Park. But I read who did, and it just didn't stick with me.
Okay.
Maybe.
Thank you.
Siri knows. Joseph? Okay. Oh,
Thank you.
hello. So we had a book club meeting last night and discussed the book, The Genius of Place, and talked about all the places that Olmsted had created and which ones we loved and had visited. Of Olmsted's parks and creations, other than Central Park or the Biltmore, which ones do you enjoy and what speaks to your heart?
Well, I haven't seen where the World's Fair was because I don't think it's there anymore. Well, there are Chicago parks, but I was talking to Peter earlier, and he said that there's a roadway that comes down along the waterfront there. Janet and I have been to the Biltmore. We loved it, and we spent a lot of time in Central Park. I've been up to the home in Brookline, Massachusetts. We're big fans of Yosemite, and we've stayed at that Ahwahnee Hotel and done hikes in Yosemite. And there's a place up on the ridge of the valley called Olmsted Point because he was so instrumental in it becoming a park. And then his son, Frederick Law Olmsted Jr., did some design work there too. So we've seen a park that he did in Seattle. Certainly our son went to Lawrenceville, so we were at Lawrenceville a lot. And it's beautiful. I went to Stanford, and he did Stanford. Now, Stanford is more square, and Lawrenceville is, the oval is still the big thing. And all the students who go there, our son, they cherish the oval.
I was just curious, when you were showing the pictures, were the buildings in place when he started to design?
No.
So he helped design the buildings as well as the landscape?
No, he didn't. They hired Henry Hobbs Richardson.
Okay.
And Henry Hobbs Richardson got ill or died, and his partners, Coolidge, some names like that, his partners carried out the design. But Leland Stanford, who'd been a railroad magnate, he hammered in the golden spike in Utah. He'd been a senator and he'd been governor of California. He had a mind of his, he really told them what he wanted, and that was it. Because Olmsted wanted to put the campus up in the hills, the foothills. It's beautiful, it's rolling, and he said, no, it's got to be down on the flat. And so there are some formality to Stanford, like the Palm Drive and the Oval and the Quadrangle. But the concept of the quad came from Olmsted, and now they do other quads because they've expanded a lot. So they'll have a science quad or a history quad or something, but they kept this quadrangle. They're just branched out in different directions. But they did it at the same time, the buildings and the landscape. One plan.
Speaking of house museums, you mentioned the Fens. Did he have any interplay with Isabel Stewart Gardner in her home and building it there that you know of?
I don't think so. I know we've been there and I know the building, but I don't think so. We've walked around. That's another property that we done is the emerald necklace and the Fens, and to like the Fine Arts Museum is right there. And so I was born and raised in Boston, and I love that those parks. But I don't think the Gardners, no. I don't know what those landscape. I know the landscape is like.
Hi. I was just wondering, did he design anything in Connecticut? I know his firm did, the Olmsted Brothers, but did Olmsted himself design anything?
Bridgeport.
Okay.
I don't know what else. Peter, you know?
Actually, if you want to go to Orrington, the Hillside Cemetery is probably one of the quintessential Olmsted landscapes you can experience the quality and character of an Olmsted landscape. Mostly because it's very small, and all the land use, all the character elements that you see in Olmsted landscape except the vegetation. Vegetation has been lost over time because that's the first thing to go in an Olmsted landscape. The topography, the circulation, the grading all stay in place, but Olmsted landscapes are very characteristic, and you can see them, you can feel them. A hillside is probably one of the best places you can sense it sort of like immediately.
Peter, that's, name the cemetery.
That's Torrington. Beardsley Park, unfortunately, is a Olmsted senior landscape that has been degraded over time. The Beardsley Zoo, one of the mounds or the sort of the overlooks that the Olmsteds create, is actually has a carousel on it. The architect decided that the carousel is more important than the view over the park, and we see this often, unfortunately. How about the Pomfret School? I'm not familiar with the Pomfret School, but Seaside Park is also a beautiful park if you get a chance.
Is that Waveney? Waveney.
Any, some more? Any other questions?
He did a lot of work at places like Smith College, could even been at Yale, at Andover, where he was not doing the whole campus. He was brought in Bryn Mawr asked him to come in and reorder the campus, and they made it more of a circle. So not every project was the whole place. Peter is with Heritage Landscape, and he is based in Silvermine area, but he does preservation landscape architects and planners all over the country, and a lot of what they're doing is bringing back original designs, sometimes of Olmsted parks. So, thanks to Peter. Yeah. Okay, thank you all for coming.
Thank you, everyone.
Books, if you're interested, books.
Thank you.
So interesting.
Good fun group. Yeah.